Jim, you're recording this? All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 2nd, 2020 meeting of the Bellingham Select Board. We have a relatively short agenda for this evening. We start off at 7 o'clock with information on the financing agreement for a motor vehicle lease. Mary and Tim.
So I had sent out some financing information, but I think it might be best if we start with Tim to talk about the need for the vehicle.
Sure. Hi, everybody. What we're trying to do here, I don't know if everybody's familiar with how we get our inspectional vehicles. Generally, we get them from hand-me-downs from mostly the police department. The vehicles that they turn over, they go down to the DPW and they get refurbished, and we repurpose them for inspection vehicles. So it's worked well. You know, it's definitely an improvement to the inspections department. They're all-wheel drive vehicles, most of them, so it helps us, you know, in the winter and off the job sites. So what's happened is most of the vehicles, well, there hasn't been a lot of vehicles lately, so we're short vehicles, and by the time we get them, they're pretty tired, but they do work well. So what we're just trying to make it be proactive, get a new vehicle into the fleet, and that's basically what we're doing. I don't know if everyone saw Mary's email from earlier, but she kind of gave a good description on how we were going about acquiring another vehicle. It's a lease. Did everyone see the email? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't know, any questions as far as the car itself?
I have a question, Mr. Connor. I read through the lease agreement, and maybe I misread it, but it seemed like the interest rate, if there's an actual interest, typically you don't know what an interest rate is on a lease, but it seemed kind of high considering today's prevailing rates are much lower. And I'm just curious, I'm not disputing the car, I'm just disputing the rate in the agreement.
Right. So I'll jump in on that one. So okay. Thank you, Mr. Martinez. You're absolutely right. When it comes to leasing, so there are different sort of price points when it comes to leasing. And given that this is a relatively inexpensive vehicle, the amount that we're talking about financing is about $32,000. Leasing companies certainly are looking for larger ticket items in order for them to be much more competitive in their interest rates. Although this interest rate is higher than what we would bear in the open market, part of the issue here is that this is an inspectional services vehicle to be utilized by the inspectional services department and not a general fund expense. What we are doing is we are utilizing the inspectional services revolving fund in order to complete this purchase. And in doing so, given that we are financing a relatively small amount when you talk to the leasing companies, the cost that's built into the cost of financing includes not only the interest rate, but also their administrative fees, their doc preparation fees, administering and servicing the loan. And so the cost for smaller ticket items tends to be a little higher than what you would bear in the open market.
We have no option to do this in the open market. We have to do it through the bid process.
So it's really driven here by the funding source. And so the funding source, we are not proposing to utilize free cash or fund borrowing. The other thing I do want to let you know is that I did go out and contact 2 different leasing companies to get 2 different cost proposals. Ended up with 3 different options, and I ran the costs of all 3 options. The one that's being presented to you is the most advantageous option, although it is only slightly cheaper than the other company's rates. This is a company that we have done business with before for the Elgin sweeper that we purchased a couple of years ago. So we have a track record with this company, which is why I'm proposing that we utilize this particular leasing company.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
So I just had 2 questions. Why wouldn't we buy it?
So again, because the funding source is the inspectional services revolving fund, right now, according to the bylaws, there is an annual spending cap of $35,000 on that particular revolving fund. And one of the things that we had to do when we put together the FY21 budget is that we actually cut Tim's budget. He had requested some additional funding for overtime for his inspectors, given the volume of work that's been happening here in the town of Bellingham. And instead of us funding that overtime through the operating budget, we funded it through the revolving fund. So there, under the current limitation of the bylaw, there is not sufficient funding for an outright purchase and the overtime that we are expecting from that department, which is why we went with the leasing option.
Okay. Second question is, should we be revisiting this bylaw and others to adjust those limits? Are they out of whack?
So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because there is an article on the November town meeting warrant to do just that. We are asking town meeting to approve a spending increase on the inspectional services revolving fund from 35 to 50,000. That's an annual limitation. It's just the upper limit that we are allowed to spend in any given fiscal year.
It's a much better answer than saying, Michael, how come you didn't read the town warrant so far?
No worries.
Fair enough. All right, what do you need from us?
We just need you to have a favorable recommendation. This particular lease, because it is a 3-year lease, any lease that is 3 years or less in the state of Massachusetts does not require official wet signatures from the board. So Dennis would be able to execute all of the paperwork that I have in my possession. We just would like your favorable recommendation in order for us to execute that contract.
I'll entertain a motion to recommend the lease and approve Dennis to sign.
Second.
So moved?
I think that was Kelly and Cynthia, but I could be wrong.
Cynthia, we're fancy tonight.
Better than that woman that I can't remember her last name. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? None? Tim, you get to drive a new vehicle. You're
You're
muted, Tim.
muted, Tim.
Still
Still
muted,
muted.
Tim. Tim, we understand you're grateful. Thanks.
Thank you. I don't know what happened. I was unmuted the whole time. Jim, what'd you do? Thank you very much. Thanks for your support. I appreciate it.
Mary, although it's not on the minutes, do you want to keep talking and speak about our new treasurer, or is that Dennis?
Mary had put the information together. It's my appointment, and I have appointed Sandra Matar to the position of treasurer collector. And as stated in my report, she's got some great qualifications. I did have an opportunity to spend some time with her. Mary spent more time with her, and she enthusiastically endorses the appointment. She was a little giddy, as you know, Mr. Chairman, when you talked with her about it, because she really does, this woman does bring some real good traits and qualities to the town, and a lot of enthusiasm. So Mary, I don't know if you want to add to that.
I did, yes, thank you. And I thank you, Dennis, for bringing this appointment forward. I did have an opportunity to meet with several candidates interviewing for the position. Sandra was certainly the top choice of those that we had interviewed. She has since interviewing with us and accepting our offer of employment, she has since come into our town hall, has met with a number of people on our staff, not the least of which was the treasurer collector's office. And we all remain enthusiastic about the skills and credentials and her level of energy that she's going to bring to the position. She seems to have some great problem solving skills and brings almost 8 years of experience in a much larger treasurer collector's operation from the town of Dedham here to the town of Bellingham. So I'm really looking forward to working very closely with her and getting through a laundry list of goals and objectives that we've got set for the finance department.
Excellent. So at this point, we're looking for a motion to ratify the appointment of Sandra Matar or Matar?
Tar?
Matar, okay, to the position of town treasurer collector.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Who got that one in? I couldn't tell.
Dan,
And
I got
seconded by
Cynthia.
second.
Dan and Cindy. Cynthia, thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? None, 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay,
She starts November 12th, so stop in and say hello.
very good. All right, next up, we need a motion on the October 19th minutes.
I make a motion to accept the minutes from October 19th, 2020 as presented.
Second,
Kelly, and was that Dan?
it was.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, none, 5-0. The SNET Trail, Dennis, I see is on your administrator's report.
It is actually Don Martinez had brought it to my attention. I know he had some calls about it. What we want to look at doing, or I'll let Don speak to it, is look at the possibility of putting in some signage similar to what we have on Center Street on Lake Street at that crossing for the SNET Trail. It is a dangerous spot. It does come up quickly. I don't know if it needs to be as elaborate as what we have on Center Street, but we'd like to look at some options there. And Don had brought it forward, and I had suggested to him that we put it on the agenda for a discussion.
Yeah, Dennis, I think Dennis said it quite clear. I had a few residents that use the SNET Trail. Actually, one texted, one called me and said, hey, is there any chance we can get, they wanted a speed bump initially, and I said, no, I don't think we can do a speed bump. So we talked about doing what we have on Center Street. And the reason why I'd like it to be what we have on Center Street is because the SNET Trail does come up pretty quick. There is a blind area, and I don't think it's nearly as blind on Center Street, but I'm not saying it's any worse or easier, but I'd like us to think about the blinking light and the signage to slow the traffic down, because if you guys go down Lake Street often, there's a fair amount of traffic, and there's also a fair amount of walkers and bicyclists on that trail. So I'd like to see if the board would consider spending some money to get the signage similar to what we have on Center Street.
And actually, it's
I
only
really
gotten
don't want to see a
busier.
death. Yeah, I don't want to see a
was gonna
death. I don't want to see an issue. I really don't. Let's get ahead of it.
I was going to say it's only gotten busier since Franklin opened up finally finished that
Yeah.
the tunnel on their side. So it's opened it up, and if you haven't been down that other side since it's opened up, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Dennis, what would it cost and where would we pay for it? How would we pay for it?
We would look to pay for it from the road money that we're adding to the DP. Assuming it passes at town meeting, we're proposing an additional $350,000 of road funding. And I believe the cost was in the $12,000 range for those 2 solar operated signs on Center Street. So we would do something similar to that. So that's where the money would come from.
And it requires a motion, and that would be from John. Don just made it. Dennis?
Hello?
Yeah, I was just waiting for Don to say that he just made the motion.
Oh, it does require.
Oh, sorry. I thought he asked you a question. I just made the motion, so somebody want to second it?
Seconded by
Second.
Dan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
5-0, none. 5-0.
Thanks for your
Right.
support, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Dennis, what else you got?
While we were on traffic, one of the problems that we've had is some cut-through streets in town I've been talking to Don about, and they've been problematic for a long time. If you can picture Elbow Street, which is the cut-through coming off of Payne that takes you over to Rentham Road, it's just been a chronic problem, and the neighbors there kind of throw their hands up in the air as to what to do. And occasionally we'll put the speed limit sign down there, the digital speed limit sign. We'll ask a police officer to sit there for a little while. Another one is Pleasant Street. If you can picture coming up Pulaski Boulevard and taking towards the Crooks Corner and taking the left at Honeydew, that's Westminster, and then taking the right onto Pleasant, and then the right onto Pickering brings you out over by Bank of America. So it's another very common cut through. And we've had quite a few calls from neighbors on Pleasant Street as well. And one of the things that we've been talking about are some sort of on these slower speed cut-throughs, looking at options for traffic calming. And one of the ideas is something that we've always kind of is the it would have to be movable speed hump so that in the winter time. But it's something we're looking at. We're looking at locations, costs, and obviously we bring it back to the board before we did anything like that and have us down with the neighbors. But particularly on Elbow Street, I think those people would pretty much support anything that slows the cut-through traffic down in that area. So they'd be removable. So essentially what you do is bolt them in place and then put some signage up, speed bump ahead, and you know, kind of be experimental to see how it worked on those side streets. And obviously we'd only do it with the support of the residents that live there. But it's an option that we're considering. You wouldn't be able to put it on a Lake Street or a Center Street, but these lower speed side streets look like they might have somewhat of a solution for those cut throughs. But that's something for further discussion, but I bring it forward to let you know it is something that we're looking at.
And is there any value there? I know we've done it up by where the Whitings live, where we make a do not enter on one side. You effectively, you don't exactly make the street one way, but we did that up at Dunkin' Donuts at the north end of town where you can't go straight.
Yeah, we did make it one way. That would be something maybe you could consider on Elbow Street, but it really would put the neighbors in a tough situation to get home because the traffic on both of those intersections, as you know, Crooks Corner and Rentham Road and Payne Street is very heavy. But I think when it comes down to the options, I think maybe we sit down with the neighbors and find out what works best because it is pretty bad there, both of those streets. And I'm sure there are other streets in town. The nice thing about doing the removable speed humps is we could put them there with some signage, take them away so they're not a problem when we plow in the winter, and maybe people give up on the cut through. It always seems the cut throughs are the ones that give us the most trouble. So something that we're talked about the tax rate hearings that we, as you know, need to hold in November. And what we want to propose is November 23rd and November 30th. As you know, we need to have a session where we open it up and then we continue it to a date certain while DOR reviews the information. So what we would be looking at scheduling is November 23rd, excuse me, and then November 30th. I know it's Thanksgiving Day week, but it is something that we always have an issue with late November scheduling. So hopefully that works for the
It
board.
works for me. Anyone else have issues with it?
No.
And Mary, I know you'll get some information out to the board ahead of the hearing.
I will, and some of the schedules that we put together, it's going to be a little different because we're going to be doing this remotely, but some of the schedules I tend to put on some of that larger ledger paper, and so I will try to have those prepared well in advance that you guys can either come in and pick up a packet. If you can't, then we can mail it to you and make sure you guys have access to what you need as we talk about setting the tax rate.
Great. Thanks, Mary. The policy statement, you've got a copy of it. It's put out annually as something procedurally that we do in accordance with the charter. If there's anything, we haven't put it out yet, but you've got a copy of the draft. If there's anything that anyone feels we need to emphasize a little bit more, let me know. I will put a statement in there if you'd like, just to suggest that we recognize the need to look at long-term solutions to the DPW, and also that we haven't given up on the senior center and the work that we've done there. And in long-term, we want to see that project come to fruition at some point in time. So that was something that we failed to get in there, but we can get in there. But if there's anything else that any of you have, feel free to email it, or if you have any comments now.
If I could just kick off some comments, I guess on the first bullet, I think where I'm uncomfortable is, it's my understanding between retirements from the police department and we have a number of defections from Bellingham going over to the Milford Police Department. Where do we stand with getting people into the academy? Because I understand from police officers that we are woefully low now.
We've got the I talked with Lieutenant Russell just last week. So there were some issues. As you know, we're a civil service department, and they had a lot of people working from home. Anyway, we did get an active list. We'll have prospective candidates coming in to sign on to the list that are on the civil service list that want a Bellingham preference. So we should know this week how many candidates have come in and how quickly we're going to be able to backfill those positions as they vacate.
All right. And I would rather swap out the fourth bullet point with the information about that we recognize the long-term needs of the library and the DPW.
Okay.
I think the optics of putting out there that we're spending money more heavily on the schools than others may back us into a corner.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone else has any feelings on that, but I would rather acknowledge the future than to indicate where we spent money this year. And my third comment, Dennis, is any thoughts would we put that we recognize that we have several projects that are coming due, and then list Lobasur and then Mechanic Street, but since we don't know when that revenue is going to come in, or at least acknowledge that it's not in fiscal 22, that's what's putting a strain on this year, because I've had some people say, well, aren't we getting a lot of money from, and unless we have some dates certain, we don't have it as part of fiscal 22.
Obviously we had a big year for new growth, and we can't count on those types of years every year. Lobasur is before the planning board. I know they're before Concom. Follow that project. They hope to break ground in the spring, but you're right. We're not necessarily going to see tremendous new growth right away from that project. We still have a fair amount of work going on, but you're right. You can't bank on $1.5 million in new growth every year. But one of the things that really makes next year a wild card, and why we're emphasizing the need to continue being fiscally prudent, is we have no idea what the state's going to do. They haven't even finalized their FY21 budget, never mind FY22. So I know they're going to use a large sum of money. Representative Soto was talking $3.5 billion from the stabilization fund to balance their FY21 budget, which makes you wonder, what are they going to do for an encore next year? So that's kind of the concern that we have there, and it's more related to what we're going to be looking at as far as state aid's concerned, or a big part of it anyway. But I don't disagree. The emphasis should be on understanding that we're not going to be looking at the large growth every year.
Anyone else have some thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, I just got a quick, it's kind of dovetailing on your comment about staffing, and it's not very related to the policy statement per se. But Dennis, I could have sworn, like, when I first got on the board, we were looking at getting away from the civil service process for the police. Has that just kind of gone by the wayside, or, and I know it's probably best to ask Chief as opposed to you, but.
Well, if we were going to do it, it would take town meeting to do that. We'd also have to have negotiations with the police department. So if it was something the board was serious about undertaking, those contracts are up this year, and it's something that we could initiate that discussion with the union. So it's not just a matter of, as you know, taking it away. It's something we'd have to bargain. So if it was something the board wanted to pursue, we could certainly bring it to the table.
I mean, wouldn't it make the hiring process a lot more streamlined?
Yeah, it would certainly make things a lot simpler. We're kind of getting into the collective bargaining aspects of it, but naturally employees get used to a certain system, and it guarantees them certain rights as far as promotions go and tenure and those types of things. Oftentimes employee groups that have it like to keep it, but I think everybody recognizes how antiquated the civil service system has become. Yep. And you look at what we do with fire. When there's a vacancy, we go out, we put advertisements out, and we're able to recruit people in the fire service. But with police, it is very difficult.
Right.
So it could be something that we bring forward in the upcoming negotiations.
Yep. All right. Discussion for another day. I was just curious. Thank you.
Yep.
Dennis, we did talk about, like Dan's right, we talked about it a few years back because that was what Franklin was doing. Were they successful?
Franklin was successful. They bargained it. It does require bargaining, and they did bargain it. I believe they did bargain it out. You're right, it was at least 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be interesting to hear from you, maybe if we can, what did it cost them?
Okay.
Dennis, if it's all right with you, I'll just stop in tomorrow to go over the statement.
Yep, and I can make those changes, and we can get that done. COVID meeting, we unfortunately, things aren't getting necessarily better. We're up to 24 cases. We're back down to 21, but I was looking at the charts from back in May when we were having 40 and 50 active cases at a time. So it pales into comparison to where we were back in the spring. We did have a live broadcast last Monday, and that was kind of a suggestion that came out of our Tuesday meetings. We'll be looking at doing it every 2 weeks and then rebroadcasting it. So we will be looking at doing that as much as anything to get Esther back out there and get the Board of Health message back out there. We are getting questions, and people are asking, what's going on in the town? Are we having problems? Do we have clusters? Those types of things. So it's good to get it out there. And I know we did get a lot of positive feedback from the broadcast that we have, where it's once every 2 weeks. It will broadcast live at 10 o'clock in the morning, but then we'll rebroadcast it several times. And I know that Cable 8 did have it on their scroll as to when it was going to play.
Anything else, Dennis, on your report? You're all set?
I'm just checking my notes to make sure that's it, and that is it. Thank you.
Okay. Any old business? Any new business? Well, the only thing I would add, I know that Pete Morano has told the school department that the staff here has to prepare 2 budgets, one a level funded budget, and one is preparing for a 10% decrease as a worst case scenario to see where the options are, which is prudent, I guess I would say. But beyond that, I would say Cindy was a big hit on TV.
Funny. If I can just chime in, I feel like in light of what Governor Baker just shared today, that we might want to consider maybe going back to a weekly broadcast. I don't know. I mean, some of the things he suggested today are requiring might make people a little anxious. Just something to throw out there. It doesn't cost us anything, but if we can be in front of it and getting information out to our residents, I think that would be a good thing.
Sure, it's easy for me. It's a matter of your availability. If board members can participate again, that's great, and we'll do it at the studio. Simple enough.
Yeah, I think people would like to know that we are still meeting once a week on Tuesday mornings, and whether we have guests or not, I think is irrelevant, and who knows who's actually watching it, but it's another opportunity to get the word out to people that we're ahead of it and actively engaged and keeping people safe. And I don't know, just something I wanted to toss out today after hearing him today talk.
Not a bad idea, Dennis. We can do it right after the Grant McNulty-Tybo show.
Nobody wants to see that, let me just say.
Can I ask a question? Is there any way to get I tried looking on the ABMI website and couldn't find it, but is there any way to get like a link to that broadcast that I can then share on social media? I find that from my Selectmen social media pages, I get a lot of hits and shares from that versus people just going to the website. I'm home, but some of the other people that I know might be working, so they, might not be watching the broadcast. But if there's another way that I can share that, I think people are more likely to click on that video and watch it than.
Agreed. Yep.
There definitely is. Yeah, There definitely is, Kelly. We can do that. And they also archive them. So we can definitely do that. We should get it on our site as well. I know we said we were going to do that. So I'll make sure this time around that we get that out and that we put a link on our website as well. But that shouldn't be difficult. And Pat had told me, Pat Fleming, this station manager, had told me there's something that we can definitely do.
Yeah, because if you can send it to me, then I can share the heck out of that stuff and reach another set of residents that way.
Yeah, I agree with Kelly. A lot of people aren't going to necessarily tune into the TV show, but if we can get it out there on social media, at least it's, it's giving the impression that we're being proactive and trying to communicate information that's important, right? I don't know.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
All right, so we will plan on Monday for another show there, right, Dennis?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, Monday at 10 o'clock. I saw Jim was had a comment.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm not sure if we were going to consider the 2020 hazard mitigation plan update
Yeah.
this evening.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah,
I
that's-
actually had a chance to read through it. I thought it was great.
a lot of time went into that. Jim did a great job. We got some technical assistance from MAPC. We did a joint program with the town of Franklin. Obviously, we have different issues that we're mitigating, but we're able to really utilize the grant funds more effectively that way. So all the various department heads participated, and I think it gives a nice reflection of where we are, where our weaknesses are, and it also puts us in a good position when we're seeking grant funds. Jim, I don't know if there's anything else that you want to add to that.
No, that touches on most of it. It's critical timing wise that if we are able to support this plan, we have a number of opportunities that are listed in that plan that we could receive grants for in the very near future. So this is definitely a kind of a need to do if the board is comfortable with it. It was a long planning process. I think Kelly, you were at that joint workshop there as the master plan representative. So it was an interesting process. It was rather unique. This was their first time doing a joint one. So I learned a lot from it. I think a lot of the department heads contribute a lot to it. So if the board is amenable, I would appreciate adoption of the plan.
And I think Dennis said, that the town of Bellingham and the town of Franklin, are very different population wise and, number wise, but they interdispersed us all together, and the MAPC people actually did feel too, there were a lot of common threads running through both of our towns and concerns. And I thought it was cool to talk to some of the other people from Franklin and hear their, sides of things too. It was a long day, but it was a good and productive day.
Okay. I'll
make a-
entertain a motion to accept.
I was going to say require a motion, but you're on it.
No, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to adopt the 2020 updated hazard mitigation plan.
Second.
Second?
I think Kelly got the second in on Dan, so we'll go with
I call
that.
bullshit. I got it before Kelly.
First by Dan, second by Kelly.
Censored.
If you won't play golf with me, you're going to be third.
Oh,
All those
boy.
in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Aye.
How did a three
playing
bullet item
Thursday.
meeting go 38 minutes?
I know.
All right. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
There you go. First and
I
second.
got that one.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Let's enjoy the rest of the week as we approach 70 degrees. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Aye.
Good night.